So apparently the Monster Hunter Wilds PC benchmark tool is the final proof you need that the full game will run better than the beta version, um, but not so fast. I'm not sure I agree with this. On the face of it, if you got a score that said excellent, you can't do better than excellent in this benchmark tool. So if we look at the score, we'll see, okay, it's excellent, and it averages 67 frames per second. Sounds good, but I think you need to delve a little bit deeper to decide whether this is a good score or not. Okay, I'm not so sure, and I'm going to provide some evidence for that. Now, Monster Hunter Wilds is a hugely anticipated game. The first Monster Hunter game was very popular, and this one is releasing across many platforms. There's going to be a lot of players, and I think there's a lot of players itching to get into this game, to get online, to form parties and go around slaying all these different beasts. I think there's a huge demand for it, and there has been a concern about performance. There have been clips, trailers, and so on, and the evidence that the game is well optimized has been lacking so far. There's very much a concern that this could end up being another Dragon's Dogma 2, which of course performed abysmally on release and still doesn't perform particularly well. Has huge issues in terms of both GPU and CPU, and I think there's evidence that this is still going to be the case, despite the veneer that this benchmark tool presents. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to first start off by highlighting some positives. Okay, there are some positives to this benchmark tool, and it follows through into the beta for the most part. Okay, I do believe the beta is short of some functionality and may not be as optimized as this benchmarking tool. That is still quite possible, but there's still evidence within the benchmarking tool itself that I think there are still issues. So if I play this, I've put some clips together here with benchmarking footage of not just the benchmarking tool, but also the current beta running from yesterday the 6th until the 9th. Okay, so I'm going to play this now. And what I will acknowledge is that the graphics user interface is quite good. You can see there I was switching between different ray tracing levels, different texture qualities, and it gives you a preview. So I think this is very close to being kind of best in class as regards that. You can see with things like shadow distance, the distant creatures having shadows under them. So let's get into the tool. Now this is a high-end PC, a 7800 X3D and a 4080 Super. So, you know, really up there in terms of high-end spec. And this is running 4K Ultra. The only thing I'm compromising on is super resolutions. DLSS 3.7. I haven't gone about exchanging any DLLs or anything through the NVIDIA app. And this is quality level upscaling. That's the only compromise I've made. Otherwise, it's all maxed out. And those cutscene FPSs look great. You know, it was up in the 70s and 80s. But you can see here, now it's starting to drop. Okay, now it's around 60, sometimes into the 50s. But this is where I'm going to highlight where we're going to start seeing obvious issues. Now we're down into the mid 50s. Yeah, so we're around about 55, 56, 57 maybe. Okay, still not terrible, but remember, this is a high-end PC. It's still the second fastest gaming CPU you can get. As you can see here, the performance of the ray tracing is quite adequate. I mean, there's decent reflections there. It's quite nice. It's not path tracing, but it's still very nice to look at. No, there are some issues with dithering that I'm going to point out soon. Okay, there are some major graphical issues. even on the very highest resolution. But certainly at lower resolutions and lower presets, you'll see a lot of dithering and a lot of other graphical issues that are of concern, including textures not loading in. Yeah, I think this scene, I have chopped it up. I'm not playing the full benchmark. It's quite a long one, but I think there's some very interesting fluid mechanics going on here. So again, this is a positive. Okay, some mouth-watering food on display here in terms of the beans and that melted cheese, and tearing the bread apart was quite good. So we get an excellent score. Now, there were times when it was dropping down into the mid-50s, but we still got an excellent score. Now, what happens when you actually run it at native in DLAA? Okay, it does look a little bit better. You can see on a 7800 X3D with a 4080 Super, now we're dropping down. Look at these frame rates here, down into the 30s. Okay, again, very high end PC. We're going down into the 30s. We're hovering around the 40 FPS mark here. And this is native, so okay, you can run games like Horizon Forbidden West with DLAA, albeit without RT, and you'll get significantly higher frame rates. But you know, it is what it is. It is using some RT, but it's only using RT for reflections. So in that particular area with several beasts or monsters, it it was struggling even to break 40 at times. So that's a little bit of a concern for me. I think that's more in line with Dragon's Dogma 2. Okay, same engine. And once again, goes above 60 here in this section. But overall, we're in the, we're not that far above 50 for native 4K on a 4080 Super. Okay, but maybe that's to be expected. That's fine. It's just that there is that disparity between that particular section there, that busy section, which I think is going to be more typical of the gameplay you encounter. Now, I did put on frame generation with DLSS quality, and we do get significantly higher frame rates, obviously, but not, you'll see here where this is the area where we were getting around 40 with native, and we were getting more like mid 50s with DLSS quality. So we're going from mid 50s base frame rate to the low 80s. Okay, so definitely nowhere near doubling. If you look at the VRAM counts, it was around 14 gigabytes, so there was plenty to spare. But you'll see there around 100 FPS with DLSS quality and frame generation. Now later on I'm going to rewind to certain parts where there are a few little graphical issues that I'm going to point out, but we'll do that later. Okay, now we're moving on to an entry level gaming PC, a Ryzen 5 5600 and an AMD Radeon RX 6650 XT. Okay, so this is our, just to be fair, a lot of my content is NVIDIA based, but this is I do have a couple of AMD graphics cards as well, and this is one of them. And you'll see here we're using FSR3 quality, and we're getting around 40 FPS. So similar to the native 4K result we were getting on the 7800 X3D with the 4080 Super. Here, of course, we're not using ray tracing. This is screen space reflections. If we were to pan the camera up and down, we would see the reflection disappear. So they're very low detail reflections. So what do these fluidy globules look like? Well, I didn't show it there. They're not quite as nice, but I thought they were still impressive enough. So again, on the face of it, it looked like a good result, but we did show FPS around 40 and that was with some upscaling. So if you were going native, you might have noticed some dithering there, quite egregious dithering, but we will come back to that. You can see here, FSR3 frame generation actually does a much better job in this game based on what I've seen with this particular graphics card compared to DLSS frame generation. So we are truly getting double the frame rate here. So you might remember that we were in kind of low 40s in this place here, and we're getting just about double the frame rate. So it's very successful from that perspective in getting good gains in terms of frame generation. Now dropping down to mid 70s, it's not going to be the best experience in terms of responsiveness or PC latency. But you see there, it's going back up towards 100. And as we go into a kind of more sparse area here, where there's less vegetation, we'll see it's going up around 120 FPS. So that's quite impressive for a really entry-level PC. So for whatever reason, it only gives us good. It doesn't give us excellent. Even though, there was nothing different than when it was without frame generation, and frame generation doubled it. So I don't know why it went from excellent to good. Now, what I've moved on to here now is the beta, okay? And big grain of salt, loads of caveats. It is the beta version. It's not the final one. They are going to be still working on optimizations and fixes and so on. So huge grain of salt with this. But what I am showing is that there is still a lot of work to do. This is, again, my high-end PC with just quality upscaling. The beta does not have RT. It doesn't have ray tracing. So don't think like that this is an example of ray tracing holding performance back. It's not. Okay, we're in the 40s. The GPU is at 97%, so it's not really a bottleneck on the CPU. We see 94. I do think there's some element of CPU bottlenecking here and there. For the most part, the GPU is maximized, but I do think there's some CPU bottlenecking going on here. When it drops down into the low 40s, for example, it's definitely the case. See there, 42, and CPU utilization dropped down to 95%. So there's definitely CPU bottlenecking here, and this is a 7800 X3D. Okay, I do have concerns about lower grade CPUs definitely bottlenecking this game for a lot of people in these very busy areas, and especially when there's multiplayer action going on. If you're part of an online party and you've got three friends tagging along with you, and you've got loads of monsters to kill, there's a big monster, there's ants or whatever you're killing, I do have concerns still that this is going to be another Dragon's Dogma 2 situation. Now it does look great here on this high-end PC. I do like the way it looks. I like the animations on the monsters. I like the design. I like the quality of the artwork and the textures and so on. Now here's the opposite end of the scale. This is my entry-level PC again, 1080p medium, FSR3 quality. Look at those textures. And if you look at the memory there, the VRAM, it's about 7 gigs allocated, 5.4 gigs used. So if we look here, this is without upscaling. Now we're going to put on upscaling. Okay, otherwise it's medium quality. Okay, so we're going from native to quality level upscaling. Does that help? It reduces the VRAM a little bit by maybe 200 megabytes, but it hasn't helped with those textures. You can see the planks, bits of wood. We'll see cloth here that's just not loading in properly. Okay, again, it's the beta. I'm making no judgment about textures and how it uses VRAM in the final version of the game, which is just not that long ago away or in the future, maybe 3 weeks. But you can see there the cloth there, the pattern on it, very much not exactly where it should be. Now, here's a treat for Linux lovers, okay? I'm always going to have a place in my heart for Linux, and I'm playing the beta version. Now, the benchmark runs flawlessly on Linux, no problem there through Steam. I didn't look at whether it was using Proton compatibility mode or whether it was running natively, but either way, it ran superbly, at least as well as Windows, if not slightly better. Um, and here, I'm not noticing any texture issues. Now, I'm not in the same area. I've played along in the game a little bit further, so I'm not seeing any texture issues on Linux. It does use a bit less VRAM, and that is an advantage of Linux, is that it uses less VRAM. So it can be the difference sometimes with lower VRAM cards. It can be just give you a little bit extra at a particular threshold. So yeah, no, that's not to say Linux, and this is Bazzite I'm actually running. It's not without issues. Okay, it does have issues, and one issue is that out of the box, I haven't looked at tweaking it or anything like that. Um, None of the upscalers work. So either FSR or XeSS, neither of them are working. Now, as you saw there, there's a certain amount of the story available in the beta. Obviously, the full version will have a lot more story, a lot more cutscenes. But what it said is that as part of the beta, you're now into the multiplayer part of it. Okay, so we can see the frame rates usually in the 40s, but now they're into the 30s in a more busy area. And there's really no difference between this version and when you're running it on Windows. It's basically the same. Here I'm showing the issue with upscaling. You see, I'm even using TAA. If I'm not using 100% scaling, it's an issue. And it's actually quite fiddly to get it to 100. I'm messing around here with the slider, and it's actually quite difficult to get it exactly onto 100. But I do get there eventually. There we are, and that resolves it. Okay, so I think I'm hoping that with the final release, now some of those textures are looking a bit off there. You can see the backpack on my little companion there, who I've nicknamed Pusky. Okay, he's my little cat buddy. I'm not sure what type of creature my little cat buddy is, but he comes along with me there on the back of this little emu-like creature here. Um, a secret, okay, for whatever reason they call them secrets, which is a bit confusing, but a secret is this kind of emu-like bird. And we see here, it's in the 40s, but this is what concerns me. This is a 5600 CPU. Now this is native. Okay, maybe we could get a little bit more with some upscaling. And the GPU is maxed out. It does drop down below, now it's in the mid 90s at times, and the frame rate is down into the low 30s at times. So I do think it does bottleneck at times, okay? So just be aware of that. Okay, so if you can see this area that I'm pointing at here, can you see all of those straight lines, those kind of striations or dithering effect? Okay, it can be quite distracting at times. That is another issue that I see with this. So here's another one where I've paused to have a look at the textures. Okay, again, just a reminder, this is the beta. Um, it's just another thing to be concerned about, but it is not a guarantee that this is what the final product will look like. So I'd be more optimistic that they might be able to optimize this kind of thing. It shouldn't be a VRAM issue according to what I see on screen in terms of the amount allocated and the per process usage, which is around 5.4 gigabytes. So it should be okay. You can see here that doesn't look like a fully loaded texture. This doesn't look like a fully loaded texture either. This crate here does not look fully loaded. In fact, there's a lot of stuff here, and you know, it's obviously a concern, but you know, we'll reserve judgment. So anyway, I think that I think that gives you a good picture of where this game is. Don't trust the benchmark tool. Run the benchmark tool. Look at those areas that I highlighted, where the secret with you on top of it jumps down to that area where there's a few monsters herding around. Look at that area if you're going to run this tool. See what kind of frame rate you get, because I think that's indicative of what you'll often encounter in the main game. Okay, unless they do some magical optimization between now and the release time, which is about 3 weeks, I think, then you know I would not be pre-ordering this game. Certainly, I would wait for the reviews, see what it's like, um, maybe wait for a few patches. You know, hopefully it'll improve over time. I guess Dragon's Dogma 2 did improve over time from its initial poor launch, and maybe we'll see something similar here. So anyway, that's going to do it. I hope someone watches this video who is thinking about getting the game, but maybe has second thoughts and maybe waits just that little bit longer to spend their money. Okay, and hopefully those Linux users out there found it useful as well. If you did find it useful, and especially if you're a Linux user, I'm going to have more basically shout outs to those Linux people out there. I'll occasionally include Linux content like I have here, because I think it's important. I think it's a growing segment. So if that's the case, you know what to do. Subscribe, and I'll see you hopefully in the next video.